Okay, this is your living ethics recap. And some really interesting posts. I'm not going to get to everybody, so if I don't say you by name, don't worry about it. Don't feel left out. I don't want to make 30, 40, 50-minute videos, which is what I'd have to do if I got to every single post. But I enjoyed reading them, and I thought they were productive. So the objective here was to act like an egotist, to act very selfish, to make it all about you, and to essentially say to people that question you, well, I'm doing it just because I need to put myself first. Or, my happiness is just as important as your own. Or, for once I'm going to put myself first, and that's just what I'm going to do. And so the idea here is, since we're going to really get into studying egotism, well, let's see how people react to those that are egotistic. Let's see if people accept it. And mostly they did not. And so when you acted like egotists, there was a number of people, many people, perhaps most people, who got angry, negative reactions. People were not happy with you acting like this. People didn't simply accept it. Matthew A., for example, interesting post, refused to pick up his girlfriend, who was just in a car accident, and totaled her car. And he wouldn't go help her. He wouldn't go take her to the CAT scan because, he just had other things to do. And his girlfriend and his sister were not happy, and they called him names that I cannot repeat on a video like this. Thomas M. was literally told to leave his house following the blizzard, and maybe during the blizzard, because he refused to help out. And a number of posts were based on this idea that you refused to help out, shoveling, cleaning off things during the blizzard. So literally asked to leave, to not be a part of the house anymore. And so in both of these cases, and in most cases, the vast majority of cases where you got these really angry reactions, the basic idea here is that people viewed this behavior as fundamentally wrong. It wasn't accepted. They didn't adopt the relativistic idea that, well, that's your opinion, that's fine. If you want to put yourself first, who am I to judge? In real life, people didn't accept that. In real life, most people on these posts were not relativists, which is really interesting when you think about it. So we may say we're relativists, we may say every opinion is just as good as another, but in practice, most people did not adopt that view. There was, and when we talk about, well, it being wrong, being fundamentally wrong to act like an egotist. Why? I think there's a number of different reasons that you could highlight based on your living ethics posts. One is the idea of karma. To a certain sense, the universe operates according to this law where if you do good, good will come back to you. If you do bad, bad things will happen to you. And Olivia, your boyfriend was pissed off at you and confused because he would always do things for her. And so, for example, he said, look, I always put gas in your car. I always help you out. I drive you places. But Olivia refused to give her boyfriend her car all-wheel drive, even though his car, in these snowy conditions, was not in great shape. And so essentially the boyfriend's appealing to this idea of karma. Like, what's up? I do things for you, you do things for me, and the yin-yang is not being reciprocated here. You're not doing your part. In the same vein, there is this idea, and a number of posts mentioned it, that what is violated here is a certain basic value. And what is violated is the basic value of respect. In other words, that this kind of egotistic and selfish behavior is disrespectful and therefore wrong. It is wrong to be disrespectful. And if that's the case, and egotism is fundamentally disrespectful, well, then it's fundamentally wrong. And in this way, it's important. Elizabeth Connor was called inconsiderate and selfish by her boyfriend. And this is interesting too because it goes to the next point, that you could say that this kind of behavior is wrong because it destroys relationships. It is incompatible with being in relationships. That to be an egotist means that you cannot be in a relationship, and if relationships are a fundamental good, well then this egotism is fundamentally bad. And the reason I mentioned Elizabeth here is because her boyfriend mentioned a cycle, and she had mentioned the cycle of rudeness. And so one is One person is rude to the other in the relationship, and the other person is rude back, and it's kind of like this snowball effect of negativity and of egotism. And this kind of relationship just simply isn't going to work. It's simply not healthy. And in the same way of destroying relationships, uh, Sarah Rash, her mom, her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's mom, she said she could see the disappointment, the hurt in their faces. They're really kind of bothered by this. And, if she'd acted like this normally in all occasions, it simply isn't going to hold together these relationships we have with others. Heather, Heather M, or excuse me, just Heather Durham, and Megan C, uh, put posts that go to the fourth point that I want to mention here in terms of it being fundamentally wrong. And that's that there's a failure to fulfill a basic duty. That we have duties to our family, to our friends, and maybe to human beings in general. And that if you are an egotist, you will fail to fulfill these duties, and therefore that makes you wrong because you break this fundamental promise and this fundamental obligation that you have to others. So Heather, Heather refused to shovel. Her mother gave her this look of death. This is absolutely unacceptable. And in the end, she had to shovel. Because in the end, her family would not accept her getting off, from these duties, failing to fulfill her obligations. They simply would not accept it. Megan had a family conference because of this. Her mom and dad came in and they had to talk to her. And essentially, they told her, if you don't change, if you are not going to do what you're supposed to do as a daughter, you're out of the house. You're gone. So if you don't fulfill these basic familial obligations, that's it. You cannot be a part of the family. So, and again, in all these cases, egotism wasn't accepted and was viewed as wrong. There were very few, as I said, that had trouble getting reactions or that accepted, people who accepted this kind of behavior. But I did notice in a number of your posts, there were a few of you who were kind of almost happy and proud that you had done this and that you enjoyed it and that you hadn't told your family, your friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, this was just for class. And so, one, I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to tell them the truth about these actions. But two, in that case, you might say, well, for these people, maybe they think it is right. There is nothing wrong with being an egotist. Now, the final thing I want to mention, and this goes to very many people, took the attitude of, well, it's just not me. And Sarah Ann said she didn't like it. She just didn't like how she felt. Morgan Brandenburger said, I hate acting this way. That doesn't make me feel good. And here's what I want to get to on this point. Is it wrong simply because you don't like it? It doesn't make you feel good? If so, then is it just wrong for you, but maybe not for others? Maybe there's some people, as I mentioned before, that enjoyed it, that didn't see a problem with it, that wouldn't tell people that they're just kind of acting. So is it just based on feelings? I mean, if it's wrong for you, is it just wrong for you, or is it wrong in general? An ethical universalist would say it's wrong in general, regardless of how you feel. If you're a relativist, you say, well, I don't like how it feels, but maybe somebody else feels differently, and who am I to judge? So that, I think, is a danger, potentially, if you say, well, if you kind of focus on, well, I just didn't like how I feel. Because you might have to go further and ask yourself, does it go beyond that? And is it wrong regardless of how I feel? And it's interesting that Taylor and Matt, I think Matt, questioned Matthew Anderson about whether it's made him feel bad. In other words, they're kind of pointing out this, well, didn't you violate some basic human duty, some basic obligation to others, and could you live with yourself? In other words, it's not simply that you feel bad and so it's wrong. It's more like you should feel bad because you violated something essential about being human. Okay, so that was kind of relating this living ethics to relativism and universalism, exploring why people could call this kind of egotistic behavior is wrong, and beginning the discussion of egotism, which we're going to study quite a bit in these next 2 weeks. It's going to be our focus.